Hello, everyone. Welcome to Super Subs Podcast. Your host, Harish.
And co-host Narvin Amatia.
So, today our main focus will be kind of around the Champions League. It's the tournament, new format of the tournament's kicked off. Um, but before we get into that, let's first, go before the Champions League and recap over the weekend some of the league games. So, Narv, let's start with who your weekend super sub was.
Um, I'll let you go first this time around because I think I've gone first each of the last episodes. So I'll let you have the first say in this one.
All right, sweet. So I think this weekend, um, there were a lot to choose from, and one that I wanted to give a shout out to was, and I know we've talked about him plenty of times on this podcast already, is just John Duran, scoring a banger, but I thought I'd switch it up. Um, and so this week I'm going with Elonga for Nottingham Forest. I thought that Uh, in the first half, Liverpool had a ton of chances, and Nottingham were really on the back foot. Uh, and I mean, it just goes to show Nuno is very tactical, and his first priority is just being defensive. So he chose Dominguez and Elliot Anderson over Ilonga and Callum Hudson-Odoi. And then, Liverpool made a couple of changes. They brought in Connor Bradley, and then immediately, Nuno, he's pretty smart tactically, and that's when he brought on Longa and Cho. And Cho ended up getting the winning goal, and it was a beautiful finish. But I think Alonga was really the game changer. He ultimately got the assist too, but um, I mean, the chances he was able to create and the danger he was he, able to be on the right side. So for that reason, I thought he was my super sub of the weekend.
That's a good choice. I was actually gonna have Callum Hudson-Odoi as a mention. But I think my super sub for this weekend will be Castro, who plays for Bologna. And I thought Como, they looked pretty comfortable up until the 75th minute, and it looked like Fabregas was going to get his first win in the Serie A, but then uh, in the 75th minute, Castro uh, he gets a goal and then um, sets up Sam Milling Jr. for a game time goal. So turned it around within 15 minutes of coming on. So that was my super sub of the weekend.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I was thinking about picking him as well. And it's cool to see him coming on as a super sub at such a young age too. Uh, I think that he's what, like 20 years old, I think. And I
Yeah,
don't I don't know if he's made an appearance for the national team yet.
I don't think so. But he's been putting in good performances, so his time will sure be coming.
Were there any other games over the weekend that you wanted to touch on? And we'll save the Chelsea and United games, for the end of the
Mhm.
podcast like we typically do.
Um, did you want to do Premier League or just any league?
Yeah, I think any league.
Any league. Um, I think you already kind of touched on the John Duran worldy. Um, Everton again just completely capitulated. Is that the word? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fell apart. 2-0 lead again. I
Nar
think
thinks he's a scholar.
I think my prediction of Everton being 11th was just quite optimistic now. Looking at their performances, they look like a relegation team, and Nottingham don't look like a relegation team. So I think I got those two mixed.
Yeah,
But
I think I had Nottingham. I don't know if I had them relegated, but I had the excuse me, pretty low as well.
Yeah, they're a good squad. They have seems like good chemistry. Um, I would say one game I want to touch on would be Premier League wise. I want to touch on the Fulham versus West Ham game, and I think this is an issue where we discussed about Julian Lopetegui coming in as manager this year. Um, that midfield setup was just kind of weird. Um, I know Kudos and Bowen, they're out there in the wings and can create a lot of chances, but running through the middle, I don't know. I don't think Pockets had an injury because I mean he came on, so I just don't know what the idea was behind it because this is a game that they should have taken 3 points from.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to our episode one where we talked about his type of style where he's very pragmatic, and it really showed in this type of game where his midfield setup was so defensive. Um, and against a team like Fulham, it just didn't make sense. Um, so I think that game was on Saturday. Another game on Saturday that I wanted to touch on from La Liga was the Real Madrid game. Again, final score, yeah, they did win 2-0, but I thought Real Sociedad looked just as good and were very unlucky not to come away with at least a point. I mean, Courtois made a couple brilliant saves and they hit the crossbar twice and the post once, I believe. Um, and they were Real Madrid were kind of panicking almost. Like Ancelotti was kept bringing on a couple different subs trying to change the game. Uh, but ultimately Real Madrid got two penalty kicks. One was very suspect. Um, and they ended up capitalizing on both those penalties and ended up winning the game 2-0. But again, I think Real Madrid have so many big personalities on the team. I mean, Vinny and Mbappe play so similarly that maybe they just don't fit together. Or, I don't know. Maybe it will just take some time for them to figure it out. But right now, they're just not looking in sync. Even the Champions League game, I mean, they just weren't looking great, even though these are two big names in the world, they don't look great together. Uh, so I thought that was kind of interesting again, and something to keep an eye on, see when Real Madrid can flip the switch. But Ancelotti's probably the perfect guy. He's always throughout his career he's been able to manage big personalities and kind of fit everyone into the team.
Yeah, looking at his coaching record, I mean, he had a stacked Milan squad. Um, he actually surprisingly didn't bring as much success to that Milan squad as I think he could have, but um, again, that Milan squad was stacked, and now he's had a pretty stacked Madrid squad a few years, so he's definitely the right guy. Um, but yeah, Madrid just haven't quite gelled yet. So
Yeah, and then if we move on to some Sunday games, I think the big game of that day was Arsenal Tottenham.
mhm.
Is there anything that you wanted to touch on from that game, or?
Yeah, I think going off of last episode, we kind of predicted that Arsenal's midfield not going to be the strongest without Rice in there. Um, Odegaard missing, and then Jorginho. He's not the best of guys to kind of bring on against the Tottenham team. Doesn't really have the legs to cover the ground, and even Thomas Partey, he's good, but I don't think he can last a full 90. So honestly, I thought Tottenham were in the attack front most of the game. Even looking at just pure possession stats, Tottenham pretty much dominated. And I think Arsenal, they kind of just played for the set pieces and were just ultimately got the goal off a corner. But I think that's how Arsenal was set up: just be defensively solid, play for the set piece to grab a win somehow.
Yeah, Arsenal set up in a low block, and to your point, you could clearly see their mentality was, okay, let's not concede. I mean, they have one of the best defenses in the world. Let's not concede, and let's try to get a goal off a set piece or a counter. Was kind of their mentality, and I mean, defensively they were solid, but I think that's where Ange, I had an issue with him on Sunday. I thought when you see that type of low block, just the player profiles that he put out just doesn't make sense. And I think Brennan Johnson, yeah, he's a speedster, but he's not going to be the guy that's going to be able to beat that low block. You need someone with some skills, some magic. So I thought Odebear would have actually been a better player to start um, out there, or even Kulusevski move him out wide and maybe move Sun in. Sun was unfortunately just hugging the touchline, and I don't get why Ange made him do that. It's not where he was able to be dangerous on Sunday against the low block. So I thought Ange is kind of to blame for because this was an opportunity for them where Arsenal were missing players to take some points.
Yeah, I totally agree on that point. Also how he was kind of using his outside backs. I know the whole new trend is kind of having them inverted, but Pedro Porro and Destiny Udogie, I mean, they have pretty good deliveries into the box. Especially Pedro Porro. I mean, he takes some of their free kicks. And so he can provide quality service. So I'm not sure why he didn't have Pedro Porro kind of pushing up, overlapping Brennan Johnson because all of Brennan Johnson's crosses were just being dealt with ease. So
Hmm. And I think Oda Bear is definitely more skillful where he's able to break that type of low block rather than Brendan Johnson. But
Brennan Johnson's definitely one of those off the bench can make definitely a lot of impact just using his speed. Um,
oh, agreed. And then I think another game I want to touch on from Sunday was Napoli. I mean, they had a 4-0 win and they looked dominant. And there's something about Napoli. I think, a lot of people were writing them off, but I have a lot of faith in Antonio Conte. I've said many times I think he's maybe the best coach of all time. And I would not be surprised if they challenge for the title this year. I know this is very early on, and I had them finishing top four, but I would be because Antonio Conte in the past, they're not having to compete in any European competitions. So that in the past, that's definitely helped Antonio Conte, and he's won the title with Juve uh, or Chelsea, when he hasn't had to focus on another tournament. So they've looked really good so far. And Lukaku's looked great.
um, yeah, another Italian matchup where it's kind of a blowout was AC Milan versus Venezia. That game was very one-sided as well. And that was one where Christian Pulisic kind of took the game over. Your boy Tammy Abraham got on the score sheet.
Hmm.
But that game was pretty much wrapped up in 30 minutes. Um, and then uh, going on into the League or the McDonald's League now. uh, Marseille continuing their undefeated streak.
How's Greenwood doing this year?
Oh, it's so sad. Like he's so good. It's just very sad how we had to let him go just because of the stuff he did, obviously. But as a player, he is on fire. I think he got like hat trick on his first game with Marseille. I think he got 2 goals on his next game. He didn't get on the score sheet, assist or goal wise, but still had a good performance. But a lot of the play does run through him. Um, Former United star boy, just such a shame. Um, and Marseille is a team that's quite enjoyable to watch, but they did make one signing where it made me like them just slightly less. In Neil Mope, he got a debut goal. Um, and then they're trying to sign a free agent in Rabiot. That'd be a nice pickup to have in the
Oh
midfield.
wow.
Um, so yeah, Marseille is like a team to look out for.
And Mope is French, right? I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Going back to his homeland. Yeah, and then Uh, De Zerbi's the coach too, so they're cooking over there.
Yeah, De Zerbi's making it look easy. So
And then I think the last thing we should touch on from this weekend is also just the Newcastle comeback. Isak, got off injured at halftime, I think, but
I didn't think it
uh,
was a serious injury, but looked
yeah,
like he just took a blow to the face. But
I haven't followed up with any news since the game, like what his injury was, but hopefully he's okay. He's had a slower start to the season. Ollie Watkins as well. But he finally got on the score sheet. But Harvey Barnes, he came in the clutch. It was a nice finish, and um, they got that win over Wolves. And I think Wolves have they gotten a point this year?
no.
Yeah, I think they've been unfortunate with like the run of games they've had, but it is looking a little tough for them right now.
But I think this is the last of the tough stretch they have. Or they might have a few more tough ones, I think.
Yeah, they still have Villa. Their next game's against Villa, and then they have Liverpool, and then I mean Brentford's somewhat of a tricky team, and
Mhm.
even them. So that was one of the games I had on this weekend, Brentford versus City, because I thought that could be a tricky game for City and potentially one where Holland could get shut down. But he ended up scoring. It was a really nice finish too, right over the keeper. But Brentford were dominating that first half. It was all Brentford. Wissa unfortunately got hurt, had to be taken off right before half, and City, is probably uh illustration of just what a great manager is when you can turn around in the second half and flip the script. But that's what City did second half. It was mostly City, but Brentford, honestly, they had opportunities to probably put three in the net against City. They were very unfortunate. Ederson
Ederson
made a
made
couple
one.
good.
Yeah, he made a few good saves, but Brentford had chances.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Thomas Frank. I've always praised him, but they still have them, and then they have City as well. So they have a tough run of games here for the next couple months.
I will say is I know I mentioned to you when we were watching that game, Wolves Newcastle, but Andre for Wolves, he was quite impressive. And I looked because I used to always see compilations when he was linked to United. And I didn't know too much about him, especially playing in Brazil, but he looked pretty impressive for having his first start in the Premier League. Um, Looked at some of his stats and he completed all 40 of his passes. Quite impressive. But yeah, I think Newcastle going forward, they have to start Harvey Barnes, even if that means pushing Anthony Gordon out to the right.
Yeah, it's hard because they have options. So, I mean, Jacob Murphy's not bad, but I think both Gordon and Barnes prefer, cutting in to the right foot, so being on the left side. So I think it's nice that they're able to rotate though, at least this year and kind of stay healthy as well.
Yeah, that's a big part for Barnes, finally getting into full fitness.
Hmm. All right. So I think that's a good recap for this weekend. We discussed our super subs of the weekend, but I thought now that we can kind of go into kind of the main segment of what we wanted to discuss today. So Champions League and is starting. These European competitions are always exciting to see big teams across Europe compete with each other. So first, I thought maybe we can explain for listeners, some feedback we've gotten is, hey, can you just give us a little more background? Because there are a lot of listeners who are completely new to soccer. There are some who know a ton. So if you are the latter where, you know, you know a lot about soccer already, you can kind of skip the next few seconds, or few minutes where we're gonna discuss what is Champions League, kind of how it started, the meaning behind it, just for those newer listeners, people getting into soccer. So, Champions League, it's a competition across that brings the top teams across uh, all the European leagues. Uh, it started in the mid 90s, and it originally was just included the champions of each league. So, for example, they would include the champions of the Premier League from the season, La Liga, Serie A, the German League, Belgium League, so forth. Um, and then eventually, and it was called the European Cup, and eventually it kind of transformed into what's now known as the Champions League. And instead of just uh, like a smaller tournament of just the champions, it included um, multiple teams from each league. And I won't get into too much of the weeds about how UEFA kind of decides how many teams from each league get selected. There is a process. So, Premier League generally is the top four will qualify for Champions League. Top four of Serie A, La Liga, Bundesliga, they make Champions League. And then from some other smaller European leagues, there will be one or two teams, maybe three. Again, the number of teams decided from each league is based on this coefficient, and there's a lot more details to it that I don't want to spend too much time on. Um, and then, occasionally, based on these coefficient and the way the UEFA decides which teams to include, sometimes you may have five Premier League teams in the Champions League. You may have five La Liga, but generally, just in your head, just think, okay, it's the top four generally from the big European leagues. But again, it's the purpose of this tournament is to bring in the top teams across all Europe and play in this tournament, and it's amazing. Um, and so this year, it's even slightly different. So historically, this Champions League, there's a whole once UEFA decides which 32 teams make the Champions League, they go through this kind of lottery type system where they literally will close their eyes and in a random pot with a bunch of different balls, they will select a ball randomly and read out a team. They go to Group A. Then they'll, mix again the balls. They'll select the name and
Mixing
uh,
balls crazy.
pause in the chat. No, but well, I mean, I'm not lying. That's what literally
Yeah,
what they
that's what they
do. Um, but that's what they do, and they'll select teams randomly to pair them up, and so there will be eight different groups with four teams in each group, and the top two teams from each group advance to the knockout stage. The knockout stage typically it's a two leg each stage of the knockouts. So round of 16, that's how it starts. It will start with a team uh, playing at home, and then the second leg they play the same exact team, but they play at the opponent's home stadium, and then whichever team wins in aggregate out of those two games ultimately moves on to quarterfinals. Same format, and then once they get to the Champions League finals, it's just a single game that can go to penalties. Um,
And just to add on before you move on, before it used to be once you got to the knockout stage, there was more emphasis on away goals. Um, so that was a whole another math that you'd have to kind of take into effect going into the game. So if you were, let's say you won the previous game away 2-0, but then at home you lose 4-2, you would, even though the aggregate is the same, you would still get eliminated because the other team scored more away goals. But they moved away from that, and now it's just total aggregate. Um, so if you're still tied on aggregate after 90 minutes, then you go into extra times and PKs. Whereas before, because of the away goals, even though the aggregate's the same, because away goals had more weight to it, the team with more away goals would advance. And in the group
oh,
stage, I think the only stipulation I want to add is when they mix the balls and teams, um, I think it's like two teams from the same country can't play, right?
Exactly. Yep. That's a
Okay.
good point. Yeah, so, if whoever selects the balls gets Man City and Arsenal in the same group, that's not, it's just they make sure not to include Arsenal in that pot. Um, just because the purpose of this tournament is to allow teams across different leagues to play against each other. Um,
And I'll let Harish kind of explain the new format because it's still a bit of a learning curve for me. So I'm sure even myself, I'll have questions for him because it's a bit confusing. I think it will take a bit of time to get used to. I kind of like the old format, but the new format I think might be a bit more fair, but it's just a little confusing logistically. So I'll let you kind of take that away.
yeah, I actually think the new format makes a lot more sense, especially for those like brand new to the Champions League. Feel free to jump in if I like misspeak or uh, you need to add anything as well. But yeah, so that's how the old Champions League format is, but now they've changed it completely on its head. So now instead of 32 teams qualifying, where it was eight groups of four, and then only the top two from each group qualify for the next round, we completely scratched the concept of groups. And instead of 32 teams, now 36 teams qualify for the Champions League, which is awesome. It gives more teams opportunity. There's much smaller teams as well that we're seeing in this tournament that, historically wouldn't get it would be more difficult for them. But this is a brand new format that started this year, and I think it's a little more fair, but, we'll talk about it and see. But the group stage has been essentially replaced with a league system. So each team now plays 8 games, and they play each of those games, they play 8 different teams. And it- their opponents, those 8 games, they're picked randomly. Again, you don't play a team from your same domestic league, but again, they randomly select from a pot of balls again, randomly. They will select 8 different teams that you'll play. 4 of those games will be away. 4 of those games will be at your home stadium. And then essentially, if you get a win, it counts as 3 points. A tie counts as one. A loss, you get 0 points. And then at the end of, the 8 games that every team plays, the first 16 teams, or I'm sorry, the top 8 teams will automatically qualify for the round of 16. And there's different tiebreaker rules, but essentially, the more points you have, the higher you are on the table. And if you're the number one seed, you get to play, the lesser seed in the knockout round. You'll play the 16th seed. So the first 8 teams automatically qualify for round of 16, full stop. And then those teams that finish between uh, 25 and below, they're automatically eliminated. They're gone. Uh, and then teams that finish between that's 9 and 24th position in the table, they play like a two-legged knockout game. So kind of like what we were talking about earlier, like they play at home against Team B, and then they'll play at Team B's stadium. And then whichever team wins in aggregate, combine those two scores, they will make the round of 16, and then the team that loses in aggregate is eliminated. So essentially, you can think of this new format as almost like another league of its own. The Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, but now you also have the Champions League, I guess, um, where it's essentially just like a table, and you want to finish at the top or top 8 to be guaranteed into the knockouts round of 16. If you're in the middle, you'll play a playoff game, and if you win that playoff game, you'll move on to round of 16. If you lose, I think you go into the Europa League. I'm not sure. I'll need to confirm that. We can look it up after the podcast. And then the bottom 12 teams are automatically eliminated.
Got it. And then one more question for you. So, in the basically the group play in this new format, where the teams play, you said 8 matches before going into the knockout.
Correct. Yep.
Um, so let's just take one team for example. So one of the games that was already played yesterday was AC Milan versus Liverpool.
Hmm.
So Milan, their next game is versus Leverkusen, but Liverpool, they necessarily wouldn't have to play Leverkusen. They would
Correct.
get
Correct.
another
Exactly.
random. Got it. Okay.
Exactly. Yep. So that's kind of the beauty of the new format, I think, is previously in the old format, it's groups of four, and you're having to compete just with the groups of four. And so you play 6 games, you play each team twice in your own group. So there's some teams that get very lucky in the draw and are playing in very easy groups. And then there's some teams that have a crazy tough group and all four could probably be like make to the knockout stages in this type of format, but because they're in such a tough group, it's unfair for them. And that's typically in the past what we call each year. There's always that one type of like toughest group, um, and
Group
they're
of
typically
death.
group. Yep, they're called the group of death. Um,
That was the beauty of the old one because like when they do the drawings of the balls to pick assign the teams to the groups, seeing like the owner's reaction when it's like you got like 3 stacked teams and then like the biggest underdog they get drawn into it and the owner's just like, ah, dang it.
yeah, yeah. So I guess speaking of group of deaths, I mean, well, before we move on, is there anything that I missed, or um, like, do you think we describe kind of the Champions League history, what it means, why it's formed, like
Yeah, I think we
clearly
got
enough?
that
Okay.
basis covered. Yep.
Yeah, so I think the next part of this now is just to, reminisce on some of the best moments of the Champions League, our favorite moments. And before we get into that, though, I thought maybe we could talk on groups of deaths. So, and I think that's a huge piece of why this new format, I appreciate it more. It's because it's a little more fair. You're playing 8 different teams, and it's not necessarily you have to be the best team within your mini group because some groups are tough. So, historically there have been groups of death, so I thought maybe we could touch on that, or maybe even if, you know, United or Chelsea, if they've been in a very unfortunate group, like one of the groups of death, you think? Maybe just talking about that. Um,
Yeah, I have one group of death that United were in, honestly. It was in the 2021 season. It was United, PSG, Leipzig, and then Istanbul. Istanbul was the whatever team. Ended up losing to them uh first game. Um and that's what ultimately cost us. But yeah, I think that was a group of death that we were in. We
what did you
didn't
guys
at
finish that year?
third. So
Third,
we didn't
okay.
move on. And that was a game, I don't know if you remember, our very last game was the must win versus Leipzig. And Leipzig were winning. We tied it up. And then the last minute, I don't know if you remember, our player crossed it in, and then Leipzig, it hit off his knee. And it was almost like an own goal last minute.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So that was that year. And then the year before that, I would say we were also in a group of deaths where it was us, or sorry, the year after, it was us, Atalanta, Young Boys, and that was a very tricky group as well. we got through that one. That was when
And I,
Ronaldo was just coming up with all the clutch goals.
but that was the just the 2020 when you guys had Leipzig and Istanbul on your team as well.
Yep.
Um, did you guys beat PSG in that first leg um when you guys played PSG? I think so.
Yeah, that was when Rashford, I think, he had the last minute winner.
Okay. Yeah,
I
the
think that's when
is
we had the zebra uniforms.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, Istanbul was a killer for y'all because I remember y'all smashed Leipzig at home and then
Rashford hat trick.
Rashford hat trick
Yeah.
and then got unfortunate with Leipzig at the last day.
Hmm.
Um and then I think PSG ended up winning that group
Yep.
that
Leipzig
year. Okay.
second.
Yeah, I think defensively y'all were very leaky
Yeah.
at the
We.
time.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the groups of deaths I think of all time is when Gareth Bale first, came on and uh he this was probably when people realized like they probably had no idea who Gareth Bale was until this tournament
Oh, I know which
he
one you're
was
gonna talk about.
when he started cooking Maicon
Yeah.
because he was originally like a left back for Tottenham and then well actually no, he was actually coming off the bench as a left back for Tottenham. And then they had some injuries, and so they put in Bale at left back, and then they're like, oh, okay, he's pretty good. And then they moved him up at a left wing once their left back uh, got healthy. And then when he came to the Champions League, he really tore it up. And I think there was that one game Inter was winning, I think 3-0, and Bale single-handedly almost brought them back to tie the game. He scored a hat trick and just cooked Maicon.
Yeah, you could really see like the skill sets of Bale in that game, just pace, power.
And finishing was amazing. And for those who, uh, again, are new, I would highly recommend going back and watching that game and maybe just a few other Inter games because when we're talking about Maicon, he's arguably one of the best uh, players from Serie A of all time. And for Bale at such a young age to cook him like that, Maicon was shook too after the game. He's like, I wasn't feeling good, or I forget. He made some excuse where he was injured or wasn't feeling good, but then second leg he still got cooked by Bale.
Yeah, and Mykon's, yeah, like you mentioned, he's not your average Joe. I mean, he's arguably considered as one of the best Brazilian right backs behind like Dani Alves and Cafu. So
Yeah, and then Tottenham also had Luka Modric as well, and the Modric these days is very different from Modric back then when he had the legs and played in more of his career's almost evolved like Pirlo, where he's now a deeper playmaker. But him and Pirlo, before were not like that. And so, I mean, that was a very exciting team. But you had Tottenham, who, again, we've talked on enough that year. And then you had Inter Milan, who they ended up winning it that year. Uh, who did they beat in the final? I think they beat Barca. Yeah, they beat Barcelona in the finals.
this was a
3-1.
treble winning Inter team, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. I mean, so that team was solid, you know, and they were expected to win this group easily, but again, this was, I think, the group of death of all time. You also had so you had Inter Milan. I'm not going to touch on them much because I mean they're a classic, one of the best teams of all time. This 2010 team, they had uh, Zanetti. We've mentioned Maicon. Who else did they have?
Schneider,
Schneider. Um,
one of my favorite forwards, Diego Milito.
yep. They had Samuel Eto'o. as well. Um, I mean, there were some more Zanetti,
and,
Pandev.
and their manager, one of the all-time greats.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then I think yeah, Balotelli was on the team too. I mean, young Balotelli. So I mean, that was a great team. And then you had Tottenham, of course. You had Bale and Modric were the main guys, but uh, you also had Aaron Lennon, who was a beast, Van der Vaart. So you had quality on that team. And then you had 20 as well, who they had Luca de Jong and do you remember like Chadli?
Yeah.
They had him too, and he was a beast back then. So I mean, that wasn't a team to really sleep on either. And then the last team was also the German team, Werder Bremen, and that's when they had Arnautovic, they had Ozil,
That was
uh,
young Ozil.
young Ozil, they had Frings, Mertesacker. So I mean, that was a solid team as well. So I think that was probably the like group of death. Um, and you know, actually ended up winning that group, and everyone, expected Inter to easily win it.
Yeah, that's a tough group. Um, I think also when you touched on Balotelli,
Hmm.
if we ever in the future talk about like funniest players, Balotelli is definitely gonna come up.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we should do a segment like that,
Mhm.
who's been one of the funniest characters to ever play.
Yeah, he's definitely up there.
And then another group of death I thought we could kind of talk about was this was more recent, so 2022 season with Liverpool, Atletico Madrid, AC Milan, and Porto. I mean, just hearing those names, that's already I think this was the second um, greatest like group of death. And even though it was like Liverpool ended up winning every single game, but I think that just goes to show how good Liverpool were that year. And they just fell short in the Champions League final there.
That was a final where I think Liverpool could have won it if it wasn't for Courtois.
Yeah, Courtois was unbelievable. Um, and then I mean that Porto team was kind of slept on too because like the previous year they were uh like amazing with Luis Diaz, and they knocked out like Cristiano Ronaldo, who's like the king of Champions League. And Milan had also won like the Serie A. They could get to the Champions League that year. Um, and then I think the last one I wanted to touch on was well, another shout out is probably 2012, 2013 with Dortmund, Real Madrid, City, and Ajax. Uh, and I think Real Madrid won that year. Um, but even then, like City had Aguero and David Silva, and they finished last with uh, just like three draws. So no, that year Dortmund won, and that's when they had Lewandowski too and Marco Reus.
Yes, that was when Robin scored like that very cheeky finish in the final.
Yeah,
I
and
think
then
one more group of death would be um from this past season um was the who was it? It was Newcastle's group. Dortmund, PSG, AC Milan, and Newcastle. I think that was a very
ooh,
tricky group.
yeah, that's a good shout.
And it was funny because Dortmund finished first, um, surprisingly, and a lot of people, including myself, I didn't really even have them getting out of the group.
No, I was asleep on Dortmund though that whole tournament. I thought each round they would play or each game, I was like, Dortmund, they're not going to be able to do it, but they had a magical run that year.
Yeah, from start to finish. I didn't even think they'd get to knockout, so
Yeah,
props to them.
for them to make it to the finals. And then, yeah, I think the last group of death was also a little more recent, 2018, 2019, with Barcelona, Tottenham, Inter, and PSV. And that's the year Tottenham, were so close to finally winning some hardware. Uh, they got to the finals with Pochettino and that classic game with Ajax to come back. And then, I mean, Conte with Inter were almost unstoppable at times. So,
Tottenham are it's a rarity for them to be in Champions League, but when they're in it, they always provide some type of drama.
oh yeah. And Barcelona, Messi, I thought that was one of his best years. Um, and I thought that was like when Dembele might kind of come onto the scene and he was starting to break out and scored some big goals in the group stages, but um, it's like ultimately it just didn't work out with him at Barca.
Yeah, that Tottenham run, I just remember it so clearly. Um, and then they got kind of unlucky in the final with giving up a penalty. So like 5 minutes into the game, not even.
Yeah, were there any other groups of death that you can think of or that you wanted to give a shout out to?
No, I think those were it. It's
Y-
always it's always tough finishing top two. So I think with um, this new format is pretty cool just because you see like a lot of the big matchups early on, even before the knockout stage.
Yeah, and I think it just goes to show like how it's a little more fair just based on the groups of deaths that we discussed, and then each year there's always a group that's super easy. Weak teams are able to get through just because of a lucky draw, you know. So yeah, so those are some groups of deaths in the past. And now I thought, sticking to the Champions League theme, because it is kind of the first week of this new Champions League, let's kind of talk about what our favorite moments from Champions League is. Maybe it's a goal or a game, or sometimes it's not even like it's just like the emotions and like memories you're able to create from these games, like that
Yeah, you
always
just
kind of
it's
stick with
so weird.
us.
It just gives you like even just thinking about some of the moments just gives you those like chills.
Yeah.
Just because they're so ingrained. Um, you want to just trade off on games?
Yeah, games are, when I was trying to think about this, I chose some games, but I also chose like just some like goals that like always kind of like have stuck with me, I guess, or like that I'll never kind of forget.
Okay. Um, Games wise, I would definitely say the Tottenham versus Ajax matchup. Those were
Yeah.
just two underdogs facing off. Um, Ajax, a very young team, um, young talented team. Had Frankie De Jong at the time, Matthijs de Ligt. Um, and so Ajax were up, and they had the away win, um, 2-0, and then uh, reverse fixture. Ajax was home. Um, they get a goal, and so it's 3-0 aggregate. So Tottenham basically have to score 3 goals, and out of all the people on that squad, Lucas Moura, uh, he just gets a hat trick, and his third goal was like literally last kick of the game. Um, and when you see like just all the like when that third goal went in, all the Ajax players just immediately collapsed to the floor. I was just like, damn. Like the change of emotions just goes from like 0 to 100 in like a second. Um, like when they just
It,
all collapse, I was just like, man, I feel for them.
and also just like the emotions that Pochettino had on the sidelines because there was like such raw emotions and like him crying, just
Yeah,
because I think he's a great coach and for him to like never having won something with Tottenham and like being so close and like it's such a historic game that like, it was like raw emotions you could see from him and him like hugging his players and stuff right after that goal.
yeah, he was. That's one that always gives me chills. Just from both sides, the emotions from both sides. Because you could just see the heartbreak. But
Yeah, my another game that always sticks with me, and this one I remember both of us watching together was the Liverpool PSG game. Or I'm sorry, Barcelona PSG game where Barca had that epic comeback. They needed a ton of goals to advance and um they scored some pretty quick. Um but then uh who was it? Was it Cavani? I think it was Cavani that scored that
mhm.
second leg.
Oh, the remontada, yeah, that was wild.
Yeah, do you remember who scored that goal in the second leg?
Yeah, that was Cavani.
Cavani. Okay. Yeah, so to break it down to those listening, so I think Barca scored like within the first like 10 minutes. Suarez had a goal, and then right before half as well, they scored another. So it was 2-0. And this is when away goals mattered. So the first leg they lost to PSG, uh, and this was in Paris. They lost 4-0. So they needed to win by four um, goals to go to overtime or extra time. But if PSG scored, then they needed to win by five, no matter what, because they didn't score an away goal. I have that correct, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Um, and so Barcelona scored early on 1-0. Right before half, they scored. It was an own goal. And then second half opened and Messi scored a penalty. And that's when, we were like, oh, snap, like this comeback is real. They just need one more goal. But it was getting kind of late. Uh, and then Cavani, 62nd minute, scored uh, a goal. So then now it's Barcelona, instead of just needing one more goal, they needed uh, three more, right? So because they needed to win by five instead of just four. So it was kind of they had chances here and there, but and PSG had chances because Barca were pushing up so much, but uh, ultimately, this is I think when Neymar was at one of his best, and he scored in the 88th minute, and it was like, okay, 4-1, you still need two more goals, like 88th minute, like there's not much time left, game's almost over, but then he gets a penalty in stoppage time, scores a penalty, and then
Was that the Suarez grabbing his throat when he got
yeah,
pushed in the back?
yeah, and then Neymar scored. And I think this, like Neymar, I think he was a player of the match, easily the best player. Um, and then at the end, Roberto, gets that goal from a set piece, but they started carrying like Messi and stuff. But uh, I thought Neymar was easily the single-handedly brought them back and probably led him to kind of leave Barcelona ultimately for PSG. Um,
I was
because
just
he,
about to
he was
say
kind of
that.
he was kind of disrespected after, you know.
Hmm.
But I think that game will always live in my head.
Another game that sticks with me. This is another one that we watched together, and it involves PSG again, but PSG versus Man United. Um, this one set up the scenario. First leg, PSG won 2-0, and we were the home team that year, 2018, 2019. Um, and that first leg was just bad, bad performance. Pogba got a red, so he was gonna miss out on the second leg. Second leg comes around, it's in Paris. We had some other injuries, so our lineup was just not the strongest. Like to read you our lineup, we had um Lindelof, Eric Bailly, Chris Smalling, Luke Shaw, Ashley Young, McTominay Fred, Andres Pereira, Lukaku, and Rashford. Um, and on the bench was just no names at that time, just youngsters: James Garner, Tahish Chung, and Angel Gomez,
Mm.
Mason Greenwood. Um, and so down 2-0 first leg, comes second leg. Within 2 minutes, Lukaku gets a goal, and then PSG get a goal like 10 minutes later. So they're up again on aggregate. Um, but then before halftime, Rashford has like that crazy knuckle shot from long range, but Buffon spills it. Lukaku gets a goal.
That was
So
so tragic because like it was weird seeing Buffon in a PSG
that was
side
sad.
just because, it's like I was never really rooting for PSG, but it's Buffon being my favorite favorite player all time. Like it was really sad to see that. But it looks so odd him in a PSG jersey instead of some Italian side.
Yeah, that's one of the weirdest transfers. And then around the 90th minute, last kick of the game, Dallo, he kicks it and it gets deflected, but Dallow's just like going crazy saying handball, goes to VAR. We get the handball, and then uh, that's where the Neymar memes just looking
Oh,
everywhere from the sideline, and then Rashford just buries it. And this was also when we were under. I think this was Ollie his very first game with United. So
yeah, I think was this the game you started crying afterwards because you were just like couldn't believe you guys did it?
I think so.
Especially because I was giving you so much crap, like just because I like to do that with United, but like in the first half, I think, and you were like getting so upset, like I thought you were about to like fight me, and
Yeah,
then
I
at the end of
remember
the game,
that.
right after the penalty, you like started crying. While and then on TV, we just see Neymar going like, what's happening?
There's a few games where you've made me cry just because you kind of keep picking on giving me crap through the game when I'm already frustrated.
Well, I think that was more cry of just like you didn't expect you
Yeah,
to win, and then you were just
that
like
was a happy
overcome with
cry. Yeah.
yeah, it was like overcome with emotions. Yeah, I remember watching. We watched that one together. A lot of these we like. It's just fun. Like remember it so vividly because we watched it together, and like they were just epic games, and we always like talk about like, hey, you remember that game or and like I think another one of those, and I'm sure everyone remembers this because it was a little more recent, was in 2018 Liverpool, when they made a comeback against Barca.
Yes. Yes.
Um, but I mean, it all started with like Trent's kind of not his no look, but it was like that quick corner kick.
Barca
Uh,
were asleep.
Barca was asleep. They were just they were still trying to like uh they were like I think just like patting each other for like good job and like defending the for a corner kick, and then Trent super smart just crosses in, get a header. Um, Origi was probably, Liverpool's hero, but like I thought it was cool because so they were down 3-0. They lost in the first leg, so they needed to win by three or more. Or if they won by more than three, they would move on. But if they won 3-0, it would go to overtime. If they won by three, but Barca scored, they'd be eliminated. So it was a big game. And even before the game, it was amazing to see Anfield like the supporters just singing their hearts out. I think that's one of the hardest stadiums to play in. Um, and Liverpool or Barcelona were you could tell rattled being in that type of environment.
And that was one where Salah wasn't even playing. He was hurt.
Yeah, but I mean, Wijnaldum was amazing that game too.
I think
Like he
he was
was,
a unsung hero.
yeah, I think so.
You know what the best moment of that game was?
Robertson
Robertson just pushing Messi's head. I was like, what are you doing?
for no reason.
Such a savage.
Yeah. And I think that's when they had like Shaqiri too, and he made an appearance and had a contribution. But that's another game that I think I'll remember for a while.
There's one game, I know this will bring back a bit of trauma for you. 2011 Barca Chelsea second leg. That's
Mm-mm.
a disgrace.
That's a
That
that was
game
probably the
was,
worst officiating of all time.
yeah. I
I mean, they
I
didn't
think
have,
that was rigged to the
I mean, back
max.
then, they didn't have VAR, but if they did, like every single call they made would have been overturned.
I think even without VAR, some of these were I thought so blatant. Um, the PK on Drugba not called, the or Anelka. No, both
Hmm.
of them. They both
It was
should have got
two,
PK.
yeah.
Um, Michael Ballack's shot, I think,
Handball.
handball, and then the ref says no, starts running back. Michael Ballack's not even playing. He's just chasing the ref, pushing them,
Dude,
yelling at
while
him.
while the game is going on, he's just like not even paying attention to the game, just yelling at the ref right in his face.
And Chelsea still had a chance to advance after all that, but then last minute, you get the iconic Iniesta just upper 90
And
shirt
that
comes off.
classic celebration, the yellow
Yeah.
undersleeve.
And that wasn't even the best goal of the day. The best one was Essien. Hit a crazy
Oh, the
banger,
curler.
but
Yeah.
no one remembers that because it's just the Iniesta.
That might be one of the best long range goals that have ever been scored for Chelsea.
Yeah. And then Drogba at the very end, just getting held back by all of his teammates.
Yeah, he was about to fight.
Yeah, I would too. That was
Okay.
just full daylight robbery that game.
Yeah, that one was I, I remember that one clearly, just like getting so heated because it looked so obvious. A lot of these like calls that just weren't made. And it just felt like everything was going against us, but it was like honestly one of the worst officiatings of all time.
Yeah, and I know there's been like scandals Barca have been under as of recent. Um, and I think it goes all the way back for sure. But you guys ultimately got your revenge the next season.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like another kind of memory that lives on with me is when we beat Barcelona in 2012, and like, I mean, you have the classic, uh, oh,
For
Torres!
listeners, just search up Barca Chelsea versus Barcelona's second leg and watch the highlights of that game.
Or
You'll
just
you'll
look up Torres.
look
The
up Fernando Torres, Gary Neville.
I think that Torres goal just like, I mean, we had it. We even if he didn't score, we would have moved on anyways. But I think that game just or that goal specifically um sticks with me just because, well, I don't think at the time I really even noticed that commentary, during the game just because I was so overwhelmed with like that goal happening. So like we would have moved on anyways, but that goal secured us moving on from Barcelona. But yeah, there's Gary Neville went crazy as well. Um, but I mean that goal sticks with me because I think just what it represented us coming back against Barca, who were one of the best teams at the time in the world. And we were massive underdogs. Um, and I remember we were getting dominated too, uh, in both legs. Like Barca were clearly the better team, but like for us to pull through, and also just like Torres wasn't having like we bought him for a lot of money. Uh, and he was kind of a flop for us. And I was always rooting for him because I liked him as a player and like he was a good guy, but like he was kind of a flop for us. But then him scoring that goal just kind of made up for everything. like it was all worth it. Um, David Luiz, his power of his hand.
Yeah. Fernando Torres was one that he was honestly one of my favorites. I had his Spain jersey. I tried to grow out my hair like him with the headband. Had the T90s, but when he got that move to Chelsea, he just looked completely different. Just um people always argue he's like one of the flops of the trend, like biggest flops in transfer history. Um but is that the game also where Lampard has like that cheeky pass and Ramirez does a little chip? Like,
Yeah, that was a game. But another Chelsea moment that will kind of stick with me is in 2005 when we beat Barca in aggregate. I think it was like 5-4. So we lost the first leg, but then that second leg, we came back and we ended up winning 4-2, but we scored like three quick goals in that second leg, and we were at home. Uh, and then Barca were slowly making a comeback. So like Ronaldinho got a PK, and then he had that one. It was like he was playing like backyard soccer with that second goal he had. It
the
was like,
shimmy shimmy.
yeah, he like just like stood there, like danced a little, and then he just like, it was genius for him to like poke it like that. Like, I think one of the smartest goals and like
So nonchalant.
skillful goals. Yeah. But for him to pull that off, but again, like we ended up winning that game with John Terry's header, and then that header kind of put us through. It's when we had Jose Mourinho also like afterwards celebrating. Like Mourinho was just like a menace on the touchline afterwards. And then Ronaldinho is such a chill guy but for him to get worked up on like wanting to fight someone, like Mourinho like really had to be kind of like an asshole for that.
Yeah, and then another I think United memory I have for sure is the 07-08 squad. I think that was one of our greatest squads hands down. And we got matched up versus you guys in that final. Um I just I always remember that Ronaldo goal just because I don't know that header um it was like the hang time he had on that header, it looked like he was like frozen in midair. Like that goal I just remember so vividly. And then obviously the John Terry slip was so unfortunate. Um but Ronaldo missed in his PK.
And then him crying
And,
afterwards too.
yeah, exactly.
But I was surprised John Terry ended up taking that fifth one. Um, because he has a history of like being terrible at the spot.
Yeah, I know. It's always like a I always have doubts whenever a defender steps up for a PK.
And I mean, we had that advantage too because Ronaldo missed it. And so we're like, okay, we just need to bag it and we're through, like we win it.
Yeah.
Literally our last kick. Because we still had like Anelka who could have probably came on later to take it, but he ended up like missing the last one for us in that sudden death shootout.
Hmm. I know I could go on forever just like these memories. Uh do you
Yeah,
have
do you
any specific goals like that
yeah,
come
let's
into mind?
yeah, let's talk about like some goals or plays specifically, like a pass or rather than a game that we remember. So do you want to start with your favorite goal or
Yeah, we
play
can.
of all
Hmm.
time?
I would say mine, um, it's not even the goal, but because of the pass would be in '05 AC Milan versus Liverpool when Kaká made that um
Mm.
splitting pass. Like that
Hernan
pass
Crespo,
was,
that one?
yeah, Crespo finish. Like finish was easy, but that pass by Kaká was just ridiculous.
I mean, the finish was easy, but it was also pretty cheeky for him to chip it over that keeper like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that was one of the pass. passes of the Champions League history. Um, and unfortunate that I mean, that was a crazy game too. If we want to talk about games where Liverpool were
Comeback.
comeback for that game.
But let's be honest, that PK was kind of rigged, like how keepers were like way off. That dude was like 3 yards off his line. Dudek,
Yeah, but still, for like Liverpool to come back from a 3-0
true. That
at
that feat
half,
itself is crazy.
yeah. I think the one of the goals that I'll remember forever is this one. Surprisingly, I don't think we watched together was Ronaldo um scoring his bicycle kick. Um, and I think this was in the quarterfinals, and where like Danny Carvajal kind of lobbed it over, and he had that bike, and it was like upper 90, and he got up like high.
I think that goal was, you can tell how good that goal was just because even Juventus fans were clapping for him.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Like they all just paid their respects and stood up and were clapping for him also. And I think the season after he made a move to Juventus and said that was like one of the reasons why.
It,
Yeah, that goal was crazy.
and I think he had another goal that game too. He had two goals to kind of put them through. Um, and then Marcelo had that like the third goal, I think, in that game. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever forget that goal, especially just how high he was able to get.
Yeah. Whose goal would you say would be better? This is another one. Liverpool versus Real Madrid. Um, the Gareth Bale bicycle kick in the final. Would you say his? Which one would you put up there? Ronaldo's or Bale?
Uh, I would probably say Bale just because um that like kind of sealed it for them.
True. I think quality Ronaldo's, but just because of the magnitude would have to be Bale's.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Granted, it was, I mean, great goal, but uh concussed Karius. um, let's see. Now, a goal that comes into my mind because he kind of haunts me every now and then. Um, is Arjen Robin for Bayern Munich. It was 2010 Champions League quarterfinal game. Um, this one I know you remember. We watched this together. Uh, the classic duo of Ribery and Robin. Corner kick, Ribery. I thought it was a miss hit corner, but then I just see Robin waiting outside the box, comes on his left, hits it first time volley, clean, and then the celebration afterwards. I was like,
Ooh,
oh
yeah.
man, that was like a just a dagger.
Especially like Robin too, like that's his classic kind of signature move.
Yeah, that left foot was just deadly.
You know who he kind of who reminds me of him nowadays?
Cole Palmer.
No, this kid has. I mean, 'cause Cole Palmer can do a bunch of different things. This guy also, because Robin, that was like kind of the only thing he did, like his move, but it was like almost unstoppable still, and he only had a left foot. But
Mm-hmm.
now there's a player that reminds me just like him, only has one move, but unstoppable, unplayable at times, and he only really has a right foot. Plays just like him.
I know who's plays like him, but trash.
Hmm.
Anthony.
Okay, yeah, not Anthony. I was thinking of Doku. He has that signature just cut to the right, drop his shoulder. Like that's the only move he
Oh,
has. And then he's got that pace just like Robin, and then he always just likes to cut in with his right, drop that
mm.
shoulder. But he gives me flashes of Robin. Speaking of United, another goal against United is Kaka. I know
Oh
we were talking about his
no.
pass, but where he was able to essentially like out dribble what like three or four players and make them look so silly.
We he made us run into each other.
It made two defenders collide, and then he just made y'all look so silly.
He was a crazy like he was cheat codes of a player.
I'm glad he played in that era though, because he had so much freedom to do what he wanted though.
It was kind of sad he never lived up to his heights in Madrid just with the injury and
Hmm.
um dang.
Yeah,
It
that
looks like
Madrid transfer with Kaká was insane as well.
oh was they brought Benzema?
Yeah.
Jeez. They
And
brought Ronaldo too
and
that
and they brought Ronaldo. Yeah.
oh wow. Scary. Unfortunate, but it looks like United are catching strays here because there's another goal that haunts me. Champions League final 2011 versus Barca. Um, Messi, he has like out of all people, Messi gets a header. Um, and his
Oh, where he's
cleat,
kind of like floating almost.
yeah, and his cleat comes, shoe comes off, and he just when he's celebrating, just carrying that blue cleat. And I was like, oh
He had a crazy game that in that final.
yeah,
And that was the one where it seemed like Park Ji-sun was kind of chasing him throughout the entire field
hmm
as well. It was like it looked like the um game plan was for Park to literally just do nothing but just follow Messi. But that goal was odd. He like Messi literally looked like he was levitating.
yeah.
Um, Another goal is I guess the year before 2010 or 2 years maybe, Inter where Stankovic had that crazy volley from midfield, where like um Inter kind of play it long, kind of like a through ball, almost one-on-one with the keeper. But it was like the keeper actually did a really good job in like doing this crazy header, like 30 yards out, like from his box. He like heads it and like dives, and then Stankovic just from like
Oh,
midfield volleys it
that
into
was
the
Neuer
goal.
that headed it, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I remember that.
but like just like the goal, like aesthetically was just like it was just nasty. But yeah, that was Neuer like his younger days when he was on Schalke. Um, and Schalke ultimately ended up winning that game, but still, I thought that was aesthetically one of the best goals and kind of getting chills when when you saw him hit it.
I think when you talk about most aesthetically like satisfying goals, I think one also it's not a screamer or anything, but 2011 Barcelona versus AC Milan. This is probably
Mhm.
the biggest one of the biggest what if players, but Alexander Pato, 24
Pato,
seconds,
oh
like just straight from kickoff, just dribbles through the entire team and just nonchalant finish.
man, what a player he could have been. And then, um, I think another goal that's similar to like that is Messi. Obviously, like Pato was kind of right off kickoff, but like for him to kind of weave through the entire team like that himself, but like almost remind me of Messi against Real Madrid. I mean, it was in the Champions League, but it was like the El Clasico, and he, Messi essentially picked it up at midfield. Again, it wasn't from kickoff, but like he got it from midfield and then essentially out dribbled Real Madrid. He did a 1-2. I forget with who, maybe Xavi did like a quick 1-2, but essentially from midfield took it all the way past the entire Real Madrid team, and then like with his weak foot, like got it past Casillas.
Yeah, I remember that one.
But I mean, kind of similar, with Pato like going
Hmm.
through the entire team. Were there any like extreme bangers that you kind of remember,
Um,
or any other like ridiculous goals that you'll remember?
there's just from watching games where I probably was like way too young to remember, but like just watching back on some of the matches that happened before, I would say like in '02, Zidane, his volley. Um,
Hmm.
I think that might be the greatest Champions League goal of all time. The way he just saw the ball just seemed to be in the air forever, and you just see him just line it up, measure it, and then cleanest of strikes. And that was during a final too.
Oh yeah, that is true. Yeah, I don't. Well, we were probably like five or something during that game, but just seeing it on uh like you just YouTube and stuff,
Hmm.
it is amazing. And like luckily we still were able to see him like live when we were like towards his end.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, like a lot of people like nowadays will just remember him for his like antics against Italy
Yeah, that is so. Yeah,
in the
that's
World
a
Cup
sad
final
way to remember him by. Yeah.
because yeah, he's one of like the best to ever do it.
Were there any champions, other ones that that kind of sticks out to you?
Yeah, I forget um who like which team he scored against, but it was like a crazy bicycle kick um in the Champions League by uh Philippe Mexis. Um I don't remember who he did it against, but um
That was
when he was with
audacious.
AC Milan,
Yeah.
they ended up winning that game, but it was like he did a bicycle kick from like the top of the box almost. I don't know if you remember
I
that
forget the
goal.
opponent. I remember that goal vividly. I just can't remember the opponent for some reason.
I think it was like in the group stages though, so it wasn't necessarily like a knockout where like it was a really important goal, but I remember it was maybe 10, 12 years ago where yeah, it was like a crazy bicycle from the top of the box.
Yeah, that was.
And yeah, I remember Milan, they had Boateng at that time too. Like I remember the team pretty well, but um like the play, I forget against who, but it was essentially like a free kick and then he like got it with his chest
Mhm.
at the top of the box. Like he just like chested it in the air and then he just like took it and did like a bicycle kick right after. Especially for like a defender to pull that off was
You never
insane.
see that. Yeah.
No.
Um. Now here's a question: is there any Champions League like uh after like a team wins, like any celebration or like goal celebrations you remember that kind of live on?
Yeah, I mean I have a poster of it, Drugba.
Yeah,
Him running around
I think that's the most
holding the trophy.
iconic celebration.
I think so too. Like him, just the way he was running too with the trophy.
Hmm. And it was like kind of chills moment when Chelsea won it, the most recent, like Mason Mount basically recreated it. I was like, oh man.
What about you? What celebrations do you remember?
Um, I know the one I mentioned to you earlier, the one where Robin, that crazy volley against us to basically secure the win in the quarterfinal, and just a
Oh,
little,
with his fingers?
yeah,
Yeah.
that just,
Too spicy. Too
yeah,
spicy.
that was just so cold. And then,
Well, speaking of cold, do you remember Ronaldo's crazy free kick against Sporting
oh,
and
and
his
he just is
celebration?
the
Just the shrug,
shrug, yeah.
Michael Jordan.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I'll remember that one. It was just like so like it was cold, kind of like Robin.
Um,
Well, even like it was a goal that you talked about uh with Messi, his header, and then he lost his shoe, and then he was kissing it. I don't know
Yeah.
why. That's pretty iconic too. And then yeah, I have one more, but it's not necessarily like a player,
Which one?
but he just cracks me up. He's a menace. Just Jose Mourinho with Porto on the touchline.
Oh, yeah, he's a menace. He's going crazy. I think we could honestly have a uh whole segment with just speaking about Jose moments.
Yeah, like I remember he was just casually sitting before they scored, and then as soon as they scored, he got sprinted off his chair and ran down the entire sideline to like where his team was, which is very unusual for managers, by the way, those listening. Like managers, you're kind of constrained in standing or sitting like within a box in your touchline. There's like a square. He ran across the entire sideline to celebrate with his team and started like pumping up the crowd. Absolute menace.
Yeah, I know there's one where he I think it might have been for a Champions League game, Chelsea Barca game where Jose was like I think he was banned or something when he showed up to give a halftime speech to Chelsea, but he snuck his way in there in like a laundry basket.
He's such a menace. I love Jose though for that, man. Like I feel like players will go to war for him.
Um, so one last question I have for you. If you could go to um any final that you've watched or weren't alive for, go back in time for, which Champions League final would you pick if you could go watch it live? Any
Let
final.
me. I'd probably say just the Chelsea Bayern game because we were like underdogs and then I mean it looked like we were just not going to win and then it was just like a roller coaster of emotions. So just like feeling that roller coaster like in person like of emotions would be amazing.
Yeah, especially because um Bayern Munich played in their home stadium, home game.
Yeah, and we were just like not supposed to win that game, so I guess just like feeling that live would be amazing to go see.
Hmm. That's another not a celebration, but Champions League moment. Where I remember vividly Schweinsteiger hitting a post and then he just grabs his shirt. Um, Classic.
Yeah. But I think like in terms of game, like if it wasn't Chelsea, just because I'm a little biased, might be the AC Milan Liverpool game. Just because of like the that Milan squad is why I kind of like
Stacked.
stacked and like we grew up watching them, and like just fell in love with Milan. So seeing them live would be amazing. And just like, yeah, they did end up losing, but I guess just witnessing like such a historical game like that.
Yeah, that's one where I think I would want to watch too, the '05 Milan final. Um, and then also uh if I could go back in time, just luckily have YouTube where you can watch past games and stuff, but the 99 Champions League final, get the uh just iconic two stoppage time goals to win it. Um and like just it's crazy because just watching the video gives you chills. So like I just can't imagine just being in attendance at the game. Um so like just watching the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer again, that winner, and like just the commentary when you watch it is just like just chills all the time. Um
Ollie was a player too,
yeah, the baby
man.
face assassin.
But
This
yeah,
is
I've never heard that term.
mhm. So
And
whenever
another one, I think that kind of gets slept on. Oh, continue.
oh yeah, I was just gonna say whenever United have a tough day in the office, that's always the video I resort to. Or just play
Lift you up.
FIFA. Yeah, just play FIFA versus the team we lost to.
I think another one is also the uh I forget which year it is, but it was a really entertaining one was Bayern Dortmund.
2012.
I think so. Um I think that would be a final that I'd want to go see as well. Um and I think that was one where I was hoping Dortmund could pull it just because they had so many likable players, and Bayern were just like a dominant team. So, um, I was rooting for Dortmund, but they lost. But still, that was like one of the like greatest like entertaining games to watch.
Yeah.
So I think now we can get into, we've watched Tuesdays and Wednesdays Champions League games. I'm not sure if you want to touch on any of those games or um, give a quick recap on any or any surprises. Um, but
Um,
thought maybe we can do that and do some predictions for, we're recording this Wednesday night, so maybe predictions for the last set of games tomorrow.
yeah. So I think the most surprising, or not surprising, but shocking scoreline was Bayern Munich just dismantling Dynamo 9-2. Um,
And they dominated. And Dynamo got quite lucky with a couple of their goals.
yeah, I was getting a little worried. I was like, man, if this gets to double digits, and the keeper was so mad after the ninth goal that was in, and like he booted the ball so hard and he just missed Thomas Mueller's face.
Oh, I
Uh,
missed that part.
yeah, so that game, the Milan game was entertaining. Um, Milan got a goal early, but then Milan was just so sloppy with the ball, and feel like you can't be sloppy against the Liverpool side. They
I
got
will say though,
punished.
yeah, I will say Liverpool did look comfortable after tying it up, but they try to just see the game out, and that's something that Liverpool is not really used to. Like Klopp, even if you were winning, under Klopp, you're kind of go, go, go. Let's grab another one. Like, you know, stomp on your opponent. Um, but like Arne Slot was trying to like see the game out, and Liverpool did not look comfortable. They almost let Milan back into it halfway through that second half.
Yeah, I would agree. Milan had some chances, just didn't put it away. But
And then
um, go ahead.
another game I wanted to touch on from that first day was Real Madrid Stuttgart. Stuttgart's a team I like in Bundesliga. I think they're a little underrated. Undorf scored, which is hyped to see in the Champions League. But again, Real Madrid got dominated first half, I thought, and Stuttgart was clearly the better team. And Courtois made a couple good saves, and um, like second half, yeah, they had some more chances, but I mean, Stuttgart they had almost like 20 shots, I think, and
They could have
Courtois,
pulled away with a win, in all honesty. The
I think
scoreline
so.
doesn't truly reflect the game because
Especially that last goal
goal,
too. Yeah.
yeah. Um, I will say, other than Bayern Munich, a team that looked quite comfortable and strong was Juventus.
I was exactly thinking that.
Yildiz, um, Yildiz had a satisfying goal. Hearing the noise of the crossbar and then the net,
Mm.
when you hit it that hard is so satisfying. But yeah, Vlahovic had a really nice assist.
Yeah,
Um,
he wasn't on the score line, but like uh two of the goals he was direct contribute I guess didn't get the assist on both, but he was definitely involved.
mhm. McKenny must have listened to us last week because
He's trying to get into our top 11.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good shout though. I thought Juventus looked great, comfortable.
I thought the matchups yesterday were there were a lot more exciting matchups yesterday compared to today. Um, I think today the best matchup was the City Inter.
Yeah, I think on paper that was the best game. I'll cover today's. I think City Holland was shut down. Bastoni, I thought he was like a 10 out of 10 today. Sommer had a few good saves, especially on Gundogan and Foden. Foden had a ton of chances when he came on, but I thought Bastoni looked good. And Tarum, like he had some good chances for Inter, and he's been on fire, but his finishing today, he left his finishing boots at home. Just not good finishing. Um, but I thought Inter defended pretty well. And then most of the game, and they looked very comfortable with Haaland in there too. But I thought once Foden got more into it, Doku was a menace when he came on. But I thought the last like 25 minutes, it was all City. It was just a matter of when they were going to score, but they ultimately didn't. I thought they were unlucky to just tie, but um, I thought another interesting result was Dortmund Club Brugge. Um, Jamie Gittins was probably the man of the match, and Super Subs podcast. It's funny that we're talking about him because he was the ultimate super sub with 2 goals today, and he was involved in the third one. But honestly, Club Brugge dominated first half. Um, the keeper for Dortmund, Kobel, had a ton of great saves. Um, and I thought Club Brugge was really unfortunate today. And ultimately, they were just punished because they didn't finish off their chances. Um, but I think they deserved at least a point. Um, but Gittins was great. And it was funny. I didn't realize Club Brugge, they had Mignolet, the keeper. So it was funny to see
He
him.
still plays? Wow.
Yeah, I didn't know he was still playing. So, and then the last game I wanted to touch on today was just the PSG Girona game. Your boy Van de Beek was actually looking pretty good. Like his movement and stuff with the team. So I'm interested to see like if he continues like this momentum with Girona. Like he might have found a home. Like he just never really got into it with United. Club was probably too big for him.
That was probably one of the saddest moves. I wanted that move to work out so bad. Because I think um
Oh, trust me, I know. I was shocked when you bought his jersey.
I'm telling you, I think he to the eye he may not be the most appealing, but when it comes to intelligence, I think
Pause. To the eye, he's
why.
not most appealing. What are we doing on here, Narf?
I'm saying like the way he plays, like he's not physically gifted compared to other players, but
Mhm.
I think he's one where his intelligence is what kind of drives him to be a good player more than his actual physical attributes. I think that's what we saw with Ajax when he was in that Ajax squad.
Yeah, he was moving around really nicely today against PSG. But I think PSG did deserve to win today. Um, they did get very lucky with the goal ultimately, but I think they deserved to win. It was just kind of sad to see Gazaniga. Uh, he had an amazing game throughout and really kept Girona in the game, but for him to let that goal kind of go through his arms and his legs, it was kind of upsetting to see that. But
I'm excited to see PSG how Bradley Barcola develops now that Mbappe's gone. I think he's a
I
young
like
talent.
Barcola. Yeah, I like him. I think I like Zaire Emery a lot as well. I think he's got a really bright future.
And another mid, I think all three of their midfielders are really good. And another one that who we both think are is quite underrated is Vitinha. Um, I think he's
Hmm.
always like not talked about enough on that squad.
Yeah, they got Fabian Ruiz too. He's a little older on the team, but um, it's a nice like balance that he's on there, even though he's kind of getting up there in age, because he's able to add some experience. So yeah, I think that's a quick recap of the game so far. And so now that Champions League is expanding the number of games being played and number of teams as well. So instead of just 2 days of Champions League games in the week, there's going to be three. So at the time of recording right now of this podcast, tomorrow, Thursday, there's a set of games. So I'll list out some games, Narv, and we can put in some predictions. And by the time this is posted, we'll probably see if we were right or wrong with our predictions. Um, to me, the first game, I think the biggest one tomorrow is Arsenal Atalanta. Wanted to get your thoughts on what your predictions are for that game, like score line or just how you think it might play out.
I think Arsenal got an easy matchup on that one. Atalanta's a little lackluster this year so far, so go Arsenal, comfortable win.
Interesting. I think it might be a little tricky.
But then again, Arsenal struggled last year versus like Porto. Um, I don't know, but I think Arsenal this one they get a comfortable win.
I think Arsenal is going to end up playing like they did against, like they should against Tottenham, kind of sit in the low block. I don't know if they will. Well, I guess they got Declan Rice back, so never mind. Scratch my thought process there. I don't know. I said at the beginning, I just don't see where their goals are going to come from this year. They're so reliant on Saka, and like they should have really gone out to get a forward. So I think it's going to be a tight one. I think I could see like maybe a 1-1 or a 2-1 Arsenal win for this one. So I'll say 2-1 Arsenal, maybe 1-1. Um, and it is at Atalanta too. All right, the next one I thought we could touch on, I think another big one is the Atletico Leipzig game. Um, what's your prediction on this one?
I think Atletico win. Um, I say maybe 3-1. I've been watching
Ye-
some of them in La Liga and I really like how they play. Gallagher's fit in really well with the squad.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they're gonna line up, just like they seem to rotate kind of heavy in the league, so we'll see. They have a lot of depth, which is good. Um, but I agree. I think 2-0 Atletico, hoping Gallagher gets a start.
Got his first goal in the weekend.
Oh yeah, top dog right there. Um, and then I think maybe the last one to touch on tomorrow is Barcelona Monaco.
I think Barca, the way they've been playing, they should be able to pull that through.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'll go with Barcelona as well. Um, not sure exactly what the score might be. I think it might be. I'll probably go with another maybe 2-1 Barcelona win. Definitely a Barcelona dub though.
Yeah, I'll say like 2-0 Barca.
Yeah, so we both got Barca around the same score. We both have Atletico and then Arsenal. I think it might be a 2-1 Arsenal dub, but I think it's gonna be a grind. Narvin thinks it might be a little more comfortable. Um,
I'll say
and
3-0
then
Arsenal. Yeah.
3-0. Okay, so I guess that's the one game we kind of differ how it will turn out. I think it's gonna be much closer. Um, and then yeah, maybe just one more we'll touch on is Leverkusen, them being in the Champions League now. They're playing the Dutch team, Feyenoord.
I'll go
Um,
with never losing Leverkusen. I think Leverkusen will get the win, but I think it will be a tight matchup. Like I think it will be just sneak a win in there.
yeah, I think. I'll go with Leverkusen as well, but I think it might be a little high scoring. This one, both teams like to play progressive
It might
type
be like a
style, so
3-2.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Maybe 3-2, 3-1. So, but I'll go with Leverkusen as well. Uh, So, a couple other games that we won't really make predictions on. Benfica play Red Star tomorrow as well, and then Brest play Sturm Graz. Uh, they're an Austrian team. Uh, never seen them play. Be honest, I've never heard of them, so
That's
I'm
the
not
beauty of
gonna.
the Champions League.
Yeah, exactly. And when we do these predictions, these are not like any betting predictions or anything that we're making. It's just for fun, what we think is gonna happen. But you can give us crap if we're way off, but
Please don't
that's just
place bets based on our predictions.
yeah, please do not. Fair warning. But those are our predictions. You know, so we'll see what happens. And then, maybe the before we close off here, just talk about the upcoming weekend games. And then maybe just a recap of an update on Chelsea and United. Um, so maybe Narv, if you want to touch on United, just maybe their last game and or just what you expect or
Yeah, I think the game versus Sheffield, first, honestly, half hour, um, Sheffield were, why am I saying Sheffield? Southampton. Apologies. Um, Southampton,
tomatoes.
yeah, tomato, tomato. They're both trash. But no, Southampton were giving us a scare first 25, 30 minutes. They were honestly the better team. That youngster they had debut, Dibbling, he was
Dibbling, oh
giving
my, he was
Dallo
cooking.
trouble. Drew the PK. Cameron Archer missed, unfortunately. But then after that PK, that kind of woke us up ultimately. And then since after that, we were kind of won comfortably. Much better second half performance. And just having a 3-0 win, getting Rashford to finally end his goal drought, hopefully does confidence boost. We played yesterday in the Carabao Cup versus a League One side in Barnsley, and we won 7-0. Rashford got 2 goals and an assist. Garnacho 2 goals and an assist. Um, Glasgow's finest, Christian Eriksen 2 goals. So Rashford he had 2 really good goals as well. So hopefully it gives a little confidence boost. I know it's
Championship level player.
hey, all I'm saying is I know it's a League One team, but sometimes I think just getting two big big scoreline results can just do a bunch for your confidence, and sometimes your performances just can improve based on your confidence level. So
So
we
you're
got to,
getting the results. Do you feel like you guys are improving or are you happier with the process from the previous weeks or how do you feel? I know you guys got the results, but
yeah. Against Sheffield, against Southampton, um, second half was better, but still wasn't like fully satisfied with how we actually played. Again, against Barnsley, um, that's how I expect us to play. Like we were playing full confidence, um, just looking very fluid on the attack. Um, Ugarte got a start, and that really he was covering so much ground. And I think Ugarte, yeah, he doesn't have like the penetrating passes, but I don't think we need him to really do that because he has the legs to cover so much ground. It's gonna allow Kobe Manu to play his game, not worry about having to do so much of the defensive dirty work. Um, so we'll see. Palace will be a tricky matchup. They're still surprisingly trying to fight for their first win. I don't think they've won yet this season. But they're a tricky opponent. Um, so I haven't been purely satisfied as of yet, but I think it will get there with time.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the process sometimes is more important than just results. And I've been seeing just like United fans, uh, like a big group just like saying, "Oh, we're back, Rashford's back, da da da." But I think there's still much more improvement. Like I think, yeah, the results, you guys got the result, that's good, but I think those were expected.
Yep.
But I think there's the process still needs to
Yep.
improve.
Like with that Southampton performance, that won't get us a win versus a better team. Um,
Exactly. I think touching on Chelsea this weekend, it was a similar play out to the game, where we also gave up a PK in the first half, but and then we saved it as well. Robert Sanchez, he had a pretty good game, but Bournemouth, they're a tricky team. They have a lot of attacking options, and my biggest concern going into the game was our right back uh, position. So we had Disasi playing out there. I like him at center back. I don't think he's bad there, but right back, he just changes the dynamic of our team, unfortunately, for the worse. And with Reece James out and Gusto out, like it's a huge concern of mine. I'm surprised Bournemouth didn't try to expose him a little more. It was a very cagey fight. I thought unsung hero from that game for us was Renato Vega in the midfield. I thought he was came in, did wonderful in place of Enzo. He led the team in tackles, and I thought he was solid in there. For being a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, like he looked very experienced, like a experienced type player. But I think the game changer ultimately probably could have been one of the super subs of the week is Jane Sancho. He came in and Bournemouth were playing in that low block, similar to what Arsenal did against Tottenham. And we were saying Odegaard probably was a better person, uh, rather than Johnson. You know, Enzo, the thing I like about him, if he sees something that needs to be fixed, he does it immediately, doesn't wait. He brought in Sancho right after half for Pedro Neto. Arne Slot rather waited for Odegaard for like the last 15, 20 minutes of the game.
or you mean
But,
Ange?
or Ange, sorry. What did I say? Did I say Slot? What am
Yeah.
I? Yeah, Ange brought in Odegaard for like the last 15, 20 minutes. But Enzo brought in Sancho right at half, and he was a difference maker. He can beat that low block because he's so skillful. So uh, it was a nice debut. He looked really good. It's definitely a stiff competition for, I think, playing time among our forwards. Unfortunately, I think Mudryk right now is at the bottom of the pecking order, but he really needs to like prove himself now. I still have hope for him. 'Cause, I mean, he's still really young, but he does seem like he's in the bottom of the pecking order right now. Um, but I think I'm happy I'm seeing improvements from last year for sure. Uh, and I think it's just a matter of time as we gel more as a team, just with so many new faces. I think we're only going to be improving.
And
I'm
Kunku finally got to blow up his balloon.
Yeah, that's true. So he has 4 goals now, and he's in the Premier League, and he's looked good. I'm surprised he doesn't get more playing time. And again, it just goes back. We have so many attacking options. I like Nicholas Jackson at the forward position, so I want him to stay there. I don't want Nkunku there. I know that's probably going to sound wild to a lot of Chelsea fans, but I think Nicholas Jackson adds a whole another element to us. I think he just needs to work on his finishing, but we have to somehow fit in Nkunku too. So I'm not sure how Enzo's going to do that, but I think we have the benefit that we can make changes earlier in the game. We don't have to wait till the last 20 minutes. We can make it at half, bring in quality players. So
Yeah, I would say I think Vega, like you mentioned, had a really good game. I thought Casado was quite dominant. there in the middle of the park also.
Yeah, he's looked amazing for us too this year.
And then the one point you brought up with the Sancho change, um, I thought it was a bit unfair to Pedro Neto. I mean, he didn't have the greatest of first halves, but I didn't think he had like a howler where like it needed like I would still give him maybe 10, 15 minutes maybe. But again, like you said, Enzo, he makes those changes quite quickly. But I don't know how it does like I don't know how it would do to his confidence or um getting subbed right at half.
I think it's just a different style though, because Bournemouth were playing a low block, and Sancho is clearly the better player to beat that type of defense. Even João Felix would be better, I think, than Pedro Neto, because Pedro Neto's more, he's got that pace to run in behind. Yeah, he's got the skills too, but when you're playing a low block, such an organized defensive team, you need someone that's got even more skills, and you don't necessarily need a pacey guy. So Sancho or João Felix, both of them came on too, but they were a better fit for that type of game style. And I'm glad Enzo recognized that pretty quick. And it's not, I don't think it's a disrespect to Pedro Neto, him getting subbed out. It's just, we just adjusted to the game plan that Bournemouth came out with.
Gotcha.
But yeah, looking into this weekend, maybe we'll just give our listeners preview into some of the big games. So Saturday we have Palace United, I think might be the most interesting game. How are you feeling about that one, Narv?
I feel pretty confident. Um
Wow, I'm surprised.
I'm feeling confident off of coming back to back wins, so I'm always optimistic that we get the win. The only worry I have is I know Palace are quite desperate for a win. They have some quality, and it looks like Nketiah is kind of kicking in, building a connection with Mateta quite quickly.
I like
Um,
that pairing this past weekend.
yeah, it's a nice duo.
And Nketiah definitely
Eze's
was,
been looking nice too. So
yeah, and Nketiah was like, like you said, he looked like he fit in, but he also looked like he wanted to like prove himself to Palace, but also like not only Palace but Arsenal as well for like not giving him enough of a chance.
yeah,
I think the game of the weekend though, well also Chelsea plays we play West Ham. I think this is a type of game where I think depending on how West Ham set up, if they do play typical Lopetegui style, I think again someone else than Pedro Neto would be a better fit, and I'm glad we have that luxury. So, but I'm feeling comfortable going into this game, and I think we'll get the dub against West Ham. Um, but I think the game of the weekend on Saturday is definitely Juventus Napoli.
yeah, that's a good matchup.
Um, I'm
I will
excited.
say, in terms of like quality, that's game of the week or game of the day for Saturday. Um, but I think for importance wise, for Premier League, also Leicester Everton, that would be quite crucial
Mm,
when it comes down to the end, and then Southampton Ipswich. So these are going to be the teams that will be fighting for that relegation come end of the season. So whoever pulls those wins, those will just be big 3 points,
yeah,
considering they're all winless.
yeah, I mean, and all of them have looked. I think Southampton's out of the four have looked the worst, but the other three teams have been a pretty competitive.
And Everton is a team that we've been talking about, especially past 2 weeks, where Sean Dyche, it's usually the attack that's bad, defense really solid, but this time around it's been the opposite. I don't know if it's I think Jared Brantwright's missing out. I think he has injury issues, but he's causing a bit of issue by missing out. But usually Sean Dyche is just so sound defensively, so it's been surprising like how
Hmm.
they've been blowing the 2-0 leads.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think especially against Villa, like They went up 2-0 and they looked nervous, like, uh-oh, here we go again, type of meme. But yeah, that's a great sh call out. Those are some huge games. Um, Sunday we have the big one, Man City Arsenal. See how that plays out. Not sure the injury De Bruyne got today. I mean, he's a key player for City. I know Odegaard will probably be out, but De Bruyne's out too. That's a big loss. But that's going to be a big game. You know, it's a long season, but every point kind of matters when it's very close at the end of it.
Who you think's gonna pull away in the victory in that one?
I think knowing Arteta, he'll probably go with the low block again and try to play off the counter. And but City's got the quality. So I think City will win maybe 2-1, 2-0.
Yeah, I think City get the win, and I think the game's actually gonna be opposite of what you were mentioning. I think it's gonna be. I think because last season a lot of people were saying, "No, Arsenal blew away the lead because they played for the tie versus City." So I think Arsenal they're gonna try to go out to grab the win at City. And I think in doing so, they're just going to leave some exposure for City to exploit.
Yeah, I think they're better off playing more defensive and trying to just play off the counter though, just the way their team is right now, especially with no Odegaard. Because they're defensively so good and it is hard to break them down. I think City's just right now the Inter game was a little one off, but I think they'll be ruthless. So they have been ruthless so far, so I think they'll be able to get at least one goal against Arsenal. But I think Arsenal will set up a little more defensive, so we'll see kind of what type of tactic Arteta goes with. But I think another huge game, another one from Serie A that weekend as well. Um, we're gonna be on the couch all weekend. Uh, is gonna be Milan Inter.
Yeah, I just saw that. Wow, that's a good matchup.
Two huge Serie A games this weekend.
Milan, they just need to fix that back line. It was crazy also seeing that Champions League for Juventus, Kalulu playing for Juventus. I completely forgot he made that move from Milan to Juve.
Yeah, and then Milan also had some injuries this against Liverpool um, with Mike Maignan. And they don't really have a backup keeper. He's like 18. I don't know if he's like a legit backup or what, but
He's the most injury-prone goalkeeper, as talented as he is.
hmm
Um, and then another Italian team I need to look out for is they're not doing me justice with all the hype I was giving them going winless this year so far is Roma
mm.
playing a Udinese team who haven't lost yet.
Oh wow, that's surprising. Yeah, Roma, I mean, Dovbek is a good transfer and everything, but I don't know. The coach just might be a little, I think he's a passion type guy and tactically, especially in Serie A where it's very tactical based,
Mhm.
I think he's gonna struggle
Wow, there's
this
another
year.
good game also Sunday. Villarreal versus Barcelona.
Ooh, yeah, that's a really good game too. Villarreal's top four, I think. I don't think they've lost yet.
Yeah, we're literally going to be on the couch all day because that's basically an hour kickoff after City, and then Milan Derby's like an hour after
8:30.
the Milan,
Yeah.
yeah, Barca game.
So yeah, it's a big weekend of games. So we'll have plenty of to talk about. Probably won't be recording a episode next week, but the following week. So we'll have plenty to talk about then. Um, so This has been another episode of Super Subs podcast. Um, thanks for listening to our Champions League edition. Let
The
us know,
champion.
champions. Yeah, I think maybe before we log out, we should sing the chorus part. Should I just go ahead with this one, or do you want to join in?
Oh, you
Throw in
got
German.
this. You got all this.
Yeah, so I love this is a classic song, no? I don't even like yeah, but classic song, so Die Mister Die Besten Les grandes equipes The champions.
And I'll give you listeners the Europa League theme song next week or the
Ooh.
following.
But yeah, let us know what your favorite Champions League moments are, goals, games, your memories. So let us know. Uh, we'll be we've created an Instagram account as well, and we'll start posting on there and getting a little more active here soon. We're just taking it step by step. Um, but yeah, let us know what else you guys want us to talk about. Hope you guys are enjoying it. Would love any feedback. Again, thanks for listening. It's been another episode of Super Subs Podcast. Peace out.